Happy Friday! With 4th of July being just around the corner, I decided to read a little excerpt for you of J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter. The Order of the Phoenix, which is the 5th book in her series, has a fantastic fireworks display, and there's no better way I can think of to celebrate with fireworks than to read Harry Potter. So this week, as you are celebrating the 4th of July and the amazing country that we live in, set off some of your own fireworks, but if you can, read a little Harry Potter and celebrate reading as well. And so the fireworks take place in chapter 28 of this book. I'm not going to start at the beginning of the chapter because I want to get right to the fireworks. So to set the scene a little bit, Harry is in Professor Umbridge's office because Professor Dumbledore has disappeared. And she's trying to get some news out of him, some information out of him, and so she's made him drink this truth serum, and so that's kind of the setting we are in. Harry's stomach turned over, and his hand holding the teacup shook so that the cup rattled in its saucer. He tilted the cup to his mouth with his lips pressed together so that some of the hot liquid trickled down onto his robes. "I don't know," he said a little too quickly. "Mr. Potter," said Umbridge, "let me remind you that it was I who almost caught the criminal Black in the Gryffindor fire in October. I know perfectly well it was you he was meeting, and if I had any proof, neither of you would be at large today. I promise you, I repeat, Mr. Potter, where is Sirius Black?" "No idea," said Harry loudly. "Haven't got a clue." They stared at each other so long that Harry felt his eyes watering. Then she stood up. "Very well, Potter. I will take your word for it this time. But be warned. The might of the Ministry stands behind me. All channels of communication in and out of this school are being monitored. A Flu network regulator is keeping watch over every fire in Hogwarts. Except my own, of course. My inquisitorial squad is opening and reading all owl posts entering and leaving the castle, and Mr. Filch is observing all secret passages in and out of the castle. If I find a shred of evidence—" Boom! The very floor of the office shook. Umbridge slipped sideways, clutching her desk for support, looking shocked. "What was—" She was gazing toward the door. Harry took the opportunity to empty his almost full cup of tea into the nearest vase of dried flowers. He could hear people running and screaming several floors below. "Back to lunch with you, Potter," cried Umbridge, raising her wand and dashing out of the office. Harry gave her a few seconds' start, then hurried after her to see what the source of all the uproar was. It was not difficult to find. One floor down, pandemonium reigned. Somebody, and Harry had a very shrewd idea who, had set off what seemed to be an enormous crate of enchanted fireworks. Dragons comprised entirely of green and gold sparks were soaring up and down the corridors, emitting loud, fiery blasts and bangs as they went. Shocking pink Catherine wheels, 5 feet in diameter, were whizzing lethally through the air like so many flying saucers. Rockets with long tails of brilliant silver stars were ricocheting off the walls. Sparklers were writing swear words in midair of their own accord. Firecrackers were exploding like mines everywhere Harry looked, and instead of burning themselves out, fading from sight, or fizzling to a halt, these pyrotechnical miracles seemed to be gaining in energy and momentum the longer he watched. Filch and Umbridge were standing, apparently transfixed with horror, halfway down the stairs. As Harry watched, one of the larger Catherine wheels seemed to decide what it needed to do was more room to maneuver. It whirled toward Umbridge and Filch with a sinister whee! Both adults yelled with fright and ducked as it soared straight out the window behind them and off across the grounds. Meanwhile, several of the dragons and a large purple bat that were smoking ominously took advantage of the open door at the end of the corridor to escape toward the second floor. "Hurry, Filch! Hurry!" shrieked Umbridge. "They'll be all over the school unless we do something! Stupefy!" A jet of red light shot out the end of her wand and hit one of the rockets. Instead of freezing in midair, it exploded with such force that it blasted a hole in the painting of a sopping-looking witch in the middle of a meadow. She ran for it just in time, reappearing seconds later, squashed into the painting next door, where a couple of wizards playing cards stood up hastily to make room for her. "Don't stun them, Filch!" shouted Umbridge angrily, for all the world as though it had been his suggestion. "Right you are, headmistress," wheezed Filch. who was a squib and could no more have stunned the fireworks than swallowed them. He dashed to a nearby cupboard, pulled out a broom, and began swatting at the fireworks in midair. Within seconds, the head of the balloon was ablaze. Harry had seen enough. Laughing, he ducked down low, ran to a door he knew was concealed behind a tapestry a little way along the corridor, and slipped through it to find Fred and George hiding just behind it, listening to Umbridge and Filch yell and quaking with surprised mirth. "Impressive," Harry said quietly, grinning. "Very impressive. You'll put Dr. Filibuster out of business, no problem." "Cheers," whispered George, wiping tears of laughter from his face. "Oh, I hope she tries banishing them next. They multiply by 10 every time you try." The fireworks continued to burn and to spread all over the school that afternoon. Though they caused plenty of disruption, particularly the fireworks, the other teachers did not seem to mind them very much. "Dear, dear," said Professor McGonagall sardonically, as one of the dragons soared around her classroom, emitting loud bangs and exhaling flame. "Miss Brown, would you mind running along to the headmistress and informing her that we have an escaped firework in our classroom?" The upshot of it all was that Professor Umbridge spent her first afternoon as headmistress running all over the school, answering the summons of the other teachers, none of whom seemed able to rid the rooms of the fireworks without her. When the final bell rang and the students were headed back to Gryffindor Tower with their bags, Harry saw, with immense satisfaction, a disheveled and soot-blackened Umbridge tottering, sweaty-faced, from Professor Flitwick's classroom. "Thank you so much, Professor," said Professor Flitwick in his squeaky little voice. "I could have gotten rid of the sparklers myself, of course, but I wasn't sure whether I had the authority." Beaming, he closed his classroom door in her snarling face. Fred and George were heroes that night in the Gryffindor common room. Even Hermione fought her way through the excited crowd around them to congratulate them. "They were wonderful fireworks," she said admiringly. "Thanks," said George, looking both surprised and pleased. "Weasley's wildfire whiz-bangs. Only thing is, we used our whole stock. We're going to have to start again from scratch now." "It was worth it, though," said Fred, who was taking orders from clamoring Gryffindors. "If you want to add your name to the waiting list, Hermione, it's 5 galleons for your basic blaze box and 20 for the Deflagration Deluxe." Hermione returned to the table where Ron and Harry were sitting staring at their school bags as though hoping their homework might spring out of it and start doing itself. So, a little fireworks from an enchanted perspective, but I do hope you enjoyed this 4th of July and celebrating the amazing country that we live in and all the freedoms that we get to enjoy every day. See you next week. Bye.